Welcome all of you today on World Earth Day. It gives me great pleasure to have a conversation with Joy Bimal Roy, whose project Touch of Joy is involved with upcycling saris uh, for a cause. Uh, the proceeds of the sale of these saris goes to Shanti Avedna Hospice in Bandra. And during the course of the rest of our conversation, we will be talking to Joy about what brought him onto this journey and where he sees this going. Welcome, Joy. Happy to have you on board today. Could you tell us a little about what you're doing, please?
Well, that's going to take some time. So, how should I? This has been a journey which is actually very short in real time, but goes back very far back in, in memories. So basically, this is something I started after my sister passed away. Her name was Yashoda, and she really had the most fabulous saris, the most fabulous taste, and she was always elegantly dressed. And people used to admire her saris all the time, and they used to joke. They say, you give it to me before you leave, It's like that kind of. So when she passed away, I just thought that it would be a good idea to start giving her saris to near and dear ones, close friends, family. And then suddenly one day I found that I'd run out of saris, but there was still a lot of people who wanted them. Then I discovered in her cupboard, old borders, which she had cut off from saris. And in fact, saris where the borders were damaged. So I started mixing and matching, and I started gifting those. And then I began to run out of that as well. So I started upcycling my dhotis and, chaddars. I used to be very flamboyantly dressed about them, I have to confess. And so I started doing that. And then it struck me that this can't go on. So I had to find a way to make it, to continue this and make it meaningful. Not just do it for pleasure, but it should help, in a way to perpetuate memories, of course. But apart from that, the fact that my mother and father passed away from cancer, and I always wanted to do something. So I thought, why not ask for donations in terms of getting saris, not money. And after I upcycle those saris, those would be sold and the proceeds would go to Shanti Avedna Sadan. And I chose Shanti Avedna Sadan because, of course, it's very dear to me because it's up my road. But the point is, it's one of the only hospices in India. And a hospice means not exactly a hospital. It's a place where terminally ill patients of cancer and even AIDS come to die peacefully. The nuns look after them. It's all palliative care. And I really felt this was a worthy cause. And so that's what's happening. But to make all this happen, I have to go back to artisans because that's how it all started in reality, when it turned from just a labor of love into something meaningful. So I have to thank Radhi Parekh from Artisans because she recognized, to give me the trust. She had faith in what I was doing, and she agreed like literally in 5 minutes time because yes. So that's how the journey began, first with my sister and then with Artisans. I have a lot of saris right now. And I do hope that people who are watching this understand that this is not about making money. This is about making memories, and they're going to make memories even for people in a hospice, because even if they don't know, they're going to be benefited. So that's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. So
yeah,
before we go on, I would like to introduce Savita, because she's not just a person who's talking to me. She has a very firm foundation in textiles, but even more interestingly, she began in doing her MA in sociology, and then she did her diploma in cyber law and cyber forensics. Of course, now she's into documenting textiles, traditions, and she's even co-authored a book on textiles of Assam. So she is the right person. The fact that she has recognized the worth of this, that she's spending time here, I feel very privileged and very honored.
Thank you so much, Joy. To all those listening, I would like to emphasize that all donations are welcome. Do send in your donations to Artisans Kalaghoda Bombay. And we have a hashtag, Are You a Sari Savior, in association with Fashion Revolution. So, as Joy rightly said, this is just beyond giving saris and upcycling them and selling them. These actually go for a very, very noble cause, one that is not in the limelight really, but it's going to make the world of a difference to someone and help them live their last days more peacefully and probably a little better. Thank you so much for this. And Joy, I wanted to ask you, you are a change maker of sorts. And this started something as a personal memory project for you, and it's grown to be a community memory project. How has this transition been for you? How has it changed you, or how is it different?
Well, I have found excitement in my life in the sense that I've always been passionate about textiles, colors, because, as you know, in India, we thrive, we celebrate colors. And the entire textures, the textile feel of, and also it's almost like a tapestry or a jigsaw puzzle, because when people give me a sari, for example, it's maybe not something I like. So I have to turn it into something that I like. And therefore the process becomes very interesting. And so you see the change here, that I'm changing something into something else. And in the process, I am changing because I feel happy. It gives me happiness.
Yes.
So if you like, I can demonstrate to you.
Please do, please do.
Because that might make the further conversation easier.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. So first of all, let me start with maybe a finished product so that you can understand. Okay. So first of all, I must thank Tejaswini Sontake Kadam, because she entrusted me with her grandmother's sarees. And I think that's a huge honor and also a huge responsibility when I get something like that. So you see this saree, okay? Now this is the Kanjivaram, which was actually this was the border, okay? I don't know if this is clear, meaning there was virtually no border, yeah? So, and she sent me this saree. Okay, you can see this portion. This is the meaning, right?
Okay.
So this came off this side. So I cut the border off from this saree and I attached it to this side.
Okay.
Right? But I was left with this. Okay. And one of the cardinal rules of making a saree, so to say, is to make sure that you have 5.5 meters in length and at least 44 inches in breadth. Now, this saree was very short because the borders were very long. Okay. So I had only this to start with, right?
Okay.
So I had to add 9 inches to each side. Okay. Now this is again upcycled. This is from a Maharashtrian Ilkal saree. Okay, this green. And this border I bought. I had to add a border because otherwise it would have looked black. So you see that the colors harmonize. So these are the things you have to keep in mind. The beige of this and the beige of this go, and the green of this, and there's green in this. Can you see? Okay. Now what do I do with the pallu? Because the pallu becomes a problem. So I add that 1 meter of green, which was removed because I was cutting out the borders. And then I put the borders like this.
Oh, lovely.
Right? So it completes the saree.
Oh, great.
So in other words, I have got from 2 sarees, I have made 2 sarees, but they're completely different from what we
Different.
started out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm very happy to say that Tejaswani is very happy with, this.
Which is wonderful.
And so there's, for example, another sari which is difficult to explain, but I'm very happy with this because, to be very honest, I hate brown. Okay. And I received a sari of this color, right? This is the part of the sari. And the border, can you see?
Yes.
It was a skirt border, meaning there was 3 parts of this. Okay. 3 parts. And there was 1 part only on top.
Okay.
So what I did is I cut the 3 parts and then I joined them in a way that there were 2 on either side, and I put it on this cream fabric.
Okay.
It's a Chandeli, but the pallu became a problem because it was falling short. So then I added the brown, all brown, and I made this. I don't know if it's getting clear, but I'm just trying to show you that there's a method in the madness. I mean, like, when you do it, you have to. Okay, so now I'll demonstrate to you an unfinished sari, so that you get an idea. So you get the disparate elements. Now these are borders from the green sari which you saw, which I told you is the Ilkal.
Yeah.
So these are you can still see the green at the edges, right? So these are the borders from both sides. This is a printed fabric. Okay. And this is a sari.
Oh, okay.
Right? Okay.
Lovely.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as the pallu, which means you have this as the existing pallu. What I will do is I will add the fabric here so that you also integrate this into the sari. Right? Can you see this?
Yeah, right.
So it gets into the sari, and this fabric has both green and red. Okay. So now this border is only green. So what I will do is I will add this border on top.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So you have a green and red, and it goes with this one. So this becomes the pallu. You have this as the border, and that makes the sari. So it will be a cream sari, and I might put one of my favorite things is badla. It's small little pieces. So since it's plain, I may just put light gold sprinkle of buttons. So that's I'm just demonstrating to you what goes into creating a sari.
Yeah. Joy, you've always spoken of a triple impact of this. Do you want to elaborate on that when you say there is a 3-way impact of what you are doing? It touches people thrice over, you say. So would you want to talk about that to our audience?
Well, first of all, I think when people donate, they are in fact donating memories. Like, for example, Tejaswini gave her grandmother sari. So that giving possibly gives them joy, that they're giving something towards a worthy cause. Then when I upcycle it, it gives me joy, right? And it creates something new. And then when I sell it, it gives joy to people who are afflicted with cancer. So it's like doing a threefold, process of giving joy, I would say. I'm sorry, it's a pun on my name, but it's like.
I'd like to tell the audience that you could put in your questions. They will be taken up at the end of the session. So any questions may be put down in the chat box so that we can take them at a later time. Joy, one of the key... Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I
No,
wanted
no.
to
One of
ask
the
you
key
about
people.
Anvaya. Because,
Oh,
hmm,
okay.
go ahead.
Anvaya.
Go ahead.
No, no. I wanted to actually talk to you about the one person who's made this possible in a sense, which is your tailor. I think his has been a very pivotal role in creating this collection of saris.
Yes.
Would you want to talk about
Yeah,
his work and how he started off?
Abbas. Yes. Well, I discovered Abbas totally by accident because my sister started going to him and she used to keep saying, I'm going to Elko, you know.
Mm.
But what should she do in Elko? I never figured out. Then she started talking about Abbas. So it was just a name.
Mm.
And I actually started gifting saris to my nieces a long time ago. Um, and what I would do is buy borders and put it on a sari. That's all, you know, the simple. So the first thing I gave was something like that. And he said, you know, I've never done anything with a sari. So when I started this and I went to him, you know, his eyes would glaze over, meaning he couldn't figure out what I was saying. So I did detailed sketches, and even then he wouldn't follow. So, you know, there were times when I'd actually cut the fabric and pin it on. And the border I'd fold so that he wouldn't include the, you know, excess part.
Yes.
So slowly he got the hang of it. And now he takes great pride in doing it because I also show him the photographs and he can't believe it. He said, meaning for him to see something which he's just sewn and on somebody, I mean, it's obviously a transformation. And he's so proud of his work. He shows it to his
This is so
assistant.
wonderful.
Look at this.
How wonderful.
So,
How wonderful.
yeah, so for him also, it's been a journey, I would say, of sorts. We've grown together because as time is going by, the saris are getting more complex. For example, sometimes I use 3 saris, as you can see. Apart from that, I also sometimes combine borders, meaning I use 3 saris from 3 borders and piece them together.
Okay.
I have one like that, you know. So it does become difficult at times to explain to him, but he's very patient and he's very enthusiastic. And also about the fact that it's for cancer, he can't get over it, you know, because I think he does work for other people, which is all to do with money. And he's got this Dubai connection. So there are horrible things there, which are completely costly. And I keep saying, what are you doing? So he said, no, I have to make 300 pieces of this and I have to do it in a hurry. And I think to myself, you know, this is what possibly designing is supposed to be about in India, you know. So this is something very new for him. And I'm delighted to have Abbas on because, you know, I feel very fortunate that I've got someone as nice a person as him. So there is another tailor also. His name is Maqsood. And I first started with Maqsood by giving him only potlis. Okay. You know, I've made a lot of potlis as well. And these again are upcycled. I made them from my sister's saris. Okay. And by the way, before I forget, this upcycled kurta, this is a border from my sister's sari.
Oh, fabulous.
Okay. So it's also, anyway. So the point is Maqsood also joined in. And when I gave him the first sari, it was an old piece. And it was very frail. So he looked at it and said, yes, a purana cheez main nahi karne wala. So I said, well, I deal in old stuff. That means you won't do it. So he became very thoughtful. And he said, agar acha condition mein hai, to aap de sakte. So then I started using him. And he's actually a far better tailor than Abbas. He's very, very, yeah. Okay. But the problem with him is highly eccentric. And, you know, and there's no control on him because he lives in Sion and I can't get to him. So if he disappears, he disappears. And then he'll go on the phone, you know, like, yeah, something happened and he's got this 3-tone voice, you know. Kya hua? Something, somebody's sick, somewhere. So I can't cope with it. I give him only when necessary, I give him something. But funnily enough, he has also started liking doing. Now he's enthusiastic. The last few times he said, "Aapke paas sari nahi hai banane ke liye?" So I realized that he's getting enthused
Yeah,
about it.
about it.
आपका idea बहुत अच्छा है, because so it's
Which
very
brings me to
sweet.
a question now, Joy. You know, there is a lot of renewed interest in pre-loved saris. And as a country, we've always upcycled our saris and repurposed them into different things, you know, like the kata quilts and stuff like that. Um, and there is a huge market for the pre-loved sari. Where do you see your collection fitting in? Because these are upcycled and these are saris that, you know, were owned by other people. Where do you actually put your collection? Who's your market? And where do you see these coming in vis-a-vis the pre-loved saris and upcycled work that India is always traditionally known for?
I would say that this is actually a very niche, probably, market. It's about people who understand, first of all, the value of old textiles, you know. So automatically they become slightly more sophisticated people, probably, who understand that these are, you know, something valuable and not just second-hand stuff. And I would say that it's people also who have the concept of charity, that, you know, they're buying something old because it's valuable in terms of memory, but also because it's going to help, you know, someone. So I would say that it would not appeal to the majority of, you know, I would say, people who just go out and buy new stuff. You know, they go to Kalanikethan or they go to wherever and buy sarees which are very expensive, but they wouldn't dream of touching somebody else's sarees. So this is to do with, I would say, in a way, with awareness, social awareness, with education. So in that sense, I would say the market is niche, but I do hope that in time, when people see that, you know, you can combine different elements and make something out of it, because it's also, for me, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, when I put things together, they're not fitting sometimes, and I have to try again. So this kind of the understanding of this, it's actually, I would say, almost like a painting, or, you know, like something which comes together, a tapestry. So maybe the understanding of that, somebody who's got that understanding of, you know, colors, of, I would say, art, even if it may be an exaggeration or whatever, but I do see these as something which are actually works of art in a way, because they're unconventional, and each piece is unique. You will not find another one like
True.
that, right?
True.
And kind of put together by hand.
We have a question there,
really
Joy.
think,
One of the
yes.
viewers is asking, do you work with weavers and put in their design inputs for borders and pallas, because they come with an inherent creativity? Are you currently working with that, or is that on your agenda at some point in time to work with
The
weavers?
question is, will I be comfortable about working with weavers?
Yeah.
I would love to work with weavers. But the whole point is that, you know, it's because of the lockdown. Actually, this has all been COVID, right? The period.
Yeah.
My entire work has taken place during COVID amongst tremendous handicaps in terms of just going out, looking things.
True.
And again, we're into a lockdown. So my work has come to a stop. But when travel is possible, I would love to go out. I would love to meet weavers. I would love to give my own ideas and designs and, you know, get to Calcutta and get Kantha work done. So, but that will all happen in time. Right now, I'm just working on donations. So I work with what I have. But if I start doing all that, then finally it may not be upcycled at all. True. So I have to somehow find a balance. Like, you know, even with the ones that I get woven, I may have to add something, and then it becomes a different thing. So yeah, it's exciting. It's like, you know, I would love to travel all over, meet weavers, you know, learn about, like you've gone to Assam and seen, you know.
Yes.
By the way, I have to say that, you know, I worked with Shyam Benegal on a film called Susman, which was based on the life of a weaver. So I spent 2 months in a small village, you know, surrounded by weavers, whom actually learned how to weave. And he made himself a shirt with that. So he was really thrilled.
Yes.
So that was a very exciting time. Of course, all I did was buy saris for my sisters and my mother because they were really reasonable and beautiful. Of course, at that time, it had never occurred to me that I would be one day doing something like this. So I can always go back to Andhra. There's so much, such a richness of uparas.
Absolutely.
All the ikat fabric,
Absolutely.
so much.
Yes.
Every place, that's the wonderful thing about India, to be doing something like this. What an amazing, what an awe-inspiring range of textiles are available.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's amazing. It's very exciting.
Do you have any particularly challenging one that you have worked on? One that just stays in your mind? Did you have any challenging piece that you have worked on that
really hideous saris, and I have to turn them into something nice or beautiful? That's a challenge. That's about all. But otherwise, it's not really. I would say that every sari actually is challenging because it requires a different approach, each one. But that's difficult to explain. The viewers may find that it's something to do with my passion, and it may not be somebody else's. But for example, let me give you, there's a lady called Rashna Cooper, and she's a friend of my friend and model Farah Dada. And suddenly I received this bag full, in a plastic bag, which I opened only after Farah had finished the shoot at midnight, and I gasped. So I must show you. These are all old Parsi borders.
Dara borders.
Look at this.
Yes.
Look at this. I am absolutely gobsmacked. And she has set me a challenge. She's told me that I want to see what you do with them. Because most people put it on crepes and satin. I want to see what you will do with them. They're all stunning. And so this is what I find exciting. Because, it challenges me to think and think out of the box, think laterally, And I know that I will have to consciously avoid using the fabrics that, Parsis normally use and try my best. So I will combine it with other fabrics. I will also add to the borders maybe. But finally, in the ultimate reckoning, for me, harmony is the most important. Meaning when you see a finished sari, you should not be able to make out what has been added and what has been, it should not be, it should be integrated. That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
For example, the sari that I showed you, this one, I don't think too many people will be able to make out that the border was not this, because it kind of integrates into the whole thing. So it's all about harmony. It's all about beauty. And that's what's challenging for me, to make everything beautiful. I want to be surrounded by beauty all the time, in every way.
We have an interesting two-part question in our box. One is, of course, the person says they have a lot of saris and their grandmother's zari saris, which they would like to upcycle, and where do they go? Where can they get them done? I would suggest if you could donate them at Artisans, that would be great, to the Sari Bank at Artisans. But it's the second part of her question that's interesting. She says, today we're talking of, people not wearing saris because it's so cumbersome to drape, and it's, after all, an unstitched length of 5.5 meters. She says, are you looking at having pre-stitched saris? Are you looking at to make them more appealing for the younger generation?
To appeal to the younger people, something easy. It's like you get ready-made dhotis, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
You get ready-made saris. Well, only if push came to shove.
Okay.
Because I believe that the sari is beautiful as it is, and I really wouldn't want to mess around with it. I mean, I think traditions are really important. And we Indians have a tradition that goes back so many thousand years. And I don't see, in terms of saris, yes, I still believe that the old, the old designs, the borders, whatever the weaves are classic. Unfortunately, what has happened is even weavers have tried to cater to modern taste, and ultimately it's na what is the dhobi na ghar ka na ghat ka, meaning it's
Yes.
neither this nor that, and it just falls in the middle path, and ultimately nobody likes it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, for example, I don't know if you've been to the Sarabhai Calico Museum in Ahmedabad.
I have. Yes, I have.
So, you see there that they have used maybe 7 or 8 colors in one fabric, right?
Yes.
And it goes totally, it's all in harmony. Here they
Yes.
can't even combine 2 colors correctly. It jars the kind of, combinations that people do. Why is that? I don't understand. So I really wouldn't want to mess around with the sari. I would say that my saris in some way are unconventional by themselves, because I changed the pallos completely and I add other fabric. So already there's a surprise, because it's not going, it's combined with a different border and a different pallo. Now, what do you expect? Normally the pallo will follow the pattern of the border, right? But here it's completely different. So, and I add something even to the border. So it is in a way it contemporizes the sari, but I maintain the tradition of using, as far as possible, very traditional motifs. I don't go in for example, I hate geometrical patterns. I would never use them. So I'd use paisleys, for example,
yes,
because they're classic. So again, I'm going back to the question. I wouldn't be the one who'd want to pleat saris. I'd let them pleat it themselves. It's okay. Get the help of.
I think the same
Get the help
asking,
of the mother, get the help of somebody else and pleat the sari. They may pin it, and do whatever they want to, but they have to wear the whole 5.5 meters. Otherwise, it's not on.
The question, I think, is, but how can we get our sari upcycled and given it back to us? Do you do that, Joy? I mean, are there cases where the person has given saris and said, but we don't want you giving it anywhere else, we want the sari back? Have you had
sound
cases
is
like
not
that?
very clear, Sarita. Can you repeat the question? The sound is not very clear.
No, they're asking, I'm asking you, do you have cases where someone has given you saris and said, please upcycle them, but return them to us, not sell it further? Do you have instances? Okay.
I have not done it so far.
Okay.
Because in a way, because I'm doing it for charity, because that would be a kind of almost a commercial enterprise. Like, I do it. But actually, I would love to.
Okay.
Just for the joy of it. It's not like, again, nothing to do with money. But I have done it. I've done it for, there are many people, this is funny. There are people who give me a whole sob story. Oh, I love this sari and I hate to part with it because it belonged to my grandmother. But, I think she would have liked to do some charity. And I said, why are you telling me all this? Once you've told me it's your grandmother's, I can't sell that sari. No, that wasn't the idea. So I have actually upcycled grandmother's saris and given it back to the person.
Which is one.
So I have done it. But they're for friends, obviously.
Okay.
But I'm happy to do it. If people want it and they're happy with what I've done, I'm happy to do it for them. There's no issue at all.
So do you see yourself doing beyond saris? I remember there was a collection of kimonos too. Would those be on offer too?
The sound is...
Kimonos? Would you be doing?
Yes.
I remember seeing some of them.
Yes. I did make kimonos, but unfortunately they didn't sell. Okay. So I do what I've always do. I give things away. Okay. I mean, like the minute they didn't sell, I gifted. Okay. So it's like one of those. The joy, I've just given one. My friend who's come here, I've given him a kimono. Okay. Like, happy to do this. So yes, for me, it's not quid pro quo, but it's like an exchange of energy. If somebody does something for me, I have to do something. It's like nothing. There's nothing in life like a free lunch.
Yes, true.
So Savita, I want to ask you about you
Of course,
first.
please. Yeah.
I wanted to tell our viewers about Anvaya because you have done so much about called weaving narratives. She has a Facebook page which is all to do with love of textiles, not just sarees, but weaves and whatever. So you have to tell us what caused this passion to change from cyber law into textiles. How did that happen?
I will be honest, textiles is not something that was planned. I wandered into it, pretty much that way. Uh, Textiles is something, handcrafted textiles is something I've always grown up with. So it's been pretty normal part of my life. I've never had to make a conscious effort to buy handlooms and wear handlooms. It's always been just that. Uh, uh, and my work in textiles happened completely by accident. It just happened to have, I just happened to have wandered in on a problem, and I saw potential in that particular case study. I saw the potential for a cluster to do well. Uh, there was no one to take ownership, so it fell upon me, or rather, I decided to take ownership of that and do something about it rather than sit and whine that, oh, the poor weavers, no one's helping, So it is just about taking action really as and when it was required. And uh, I think my background in academics uh, helped a lot because uh, as a trained researcher, I think you're always asking questions, why is this happening and what can we do to make it better, and how are things working on the ground? So Anvaya was born out of uh, that entire need to ask the right questions to the right people. So if you ask me to describe Anvaya, I would hope it's like a coffee shop, a very warm, friendly coffee shop where people come. There is a lot of ribbing going on. There's a lot of teasing going on. There's a lot of ranting going on. Typical when you meet friends and you're upset, you've had a bad day, you will come and rant. Anvaya is that space. Um, we also learn a lot. There is a lot of learning, information, and experience sharing that happens on Anvaya. And I think one of the critical reasons why it's grown from, I think when we started, we were about 20 people, and I didn't think it would grow beyond 45. And we're about 900 of us today. A lot of them are silent, but I do know that they are reading actively at what's happening and they're absorbing that. And I think one of the biggest things needs Anvaya fulfills is it keeps the language very simple. We talk to the layperson. We are not talking to the textile expert. We are not talking technical stuff. We are primarily talking to the layperson, making things easy to understand so that textiles don't become intimidating. What I have found is that when we talk handcrafted textiles, we're so obsessed with the entire technicality of it that we make it very intimidating for the layperson. So they put off it.
True.
But I think Anvaya has helped simplify that entire thing. And a second big reason is that I firmly believe there is no such thing as a dumb question. There is really no such thing as a dumb question. What may seem dumb to you could be very critical to another person. So Anvaya encourages all kinds of questions. And most of the time, I think they do get answered. People go away with, decent answers. They know where they stand. They're able to identify between the authentic and the fake. So I think that's very important too, that in a market where it's so easy for machine-made products to, come in and take the place of the hand-woven ones, and fakes rule the market, we need someone, or we need people who will stand up and say, look, what you're selling is not the authentic product, because we do know there are
Right.
repercussions when those things happen. So I think it's these little things that Anvaya has been able to do in its own small way. We are not
That's
flag
wonderful.
bearing activists. No, we are not that at all. But what I did notice is when it comes to calling out the lack of ethics, when it comes to calling out fakes, when I look at the comments on these sellers saying inevitably the person belongs to Anvaya. And that makes me very happy because I think somewhere over the past few years, we've helped people identify and ask the right questions at the right time to the right people. I think that's been the greatest thing that has been made possible by Anvaya. And the fact that I have a background in cyber law helps because I know how far to push the boundary and when I should step back, And even while talking to weavers and helping them uh, come online and sell, I think I've been able to combine my academics with the work that I'm currently doing,
That's
Though
wonderful.
yeah, absolutely.
So I want to ask you something.
Yeah,
So Srobona introduced uh, the idea of me to you, or
absolutely.
showed you.
Absolutely.
And even before you met me, you had already promoted me on Anvaya, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm very grateful. But what made you do that? Let me understand. Why did you do that? With spontaneously, you did something which I've still not followed. What did you see? What was it
Okay.
that?
Uh, for me, there are three things here. One is, of course, the original lot of saris that were coming, which were your personal collection, from your mothers and sisters. So they carried a very rich personal and textile history with them. Uh, and what intrigued me was that you were so willing to share. I don't know many people who will let go of such deeply personal objects that easily. And I knew they were coming with a wealth of stories. Uh, that fascinates me no end. Uh, I love stories, and if you look at Anvaya's page, we will always say that we are storytellers, and that's exactly who we are. And I believe that stories are not a luxury. These are absolute necessities so we can live our lives better and more meaningfully. So the stories that your saris brought were a primary attraction. And the memories that came with them, and the fact that
Yeah,
you so generously allowed people to build their own memories with the saris by making a completely new sari and allowing people to buy it, you were enabling more memories to be created. And for a person who's working in textiles, documenting all of this, some of the motifs, some of the design, some of the workmanship that I was seeing in the old saris, I think took my breath away. I don't think we're seeing such stuff in recent times, and that sort of drove the point home that we need to start documenting these little things so that at some point these act as a reference to the potential we had and our capabilities, and where did we really lose all of this and why. So these are some of the reasons, and that is an instinctive response, and I trust my instinct a lot on these things. So the moment Shobana told me about it, of course saris and me are inextricably linked. But yes, I think it's that the sheer generosity of spirit in giving these, the ability to create more memories, and it's so tempting when you see so much textile design language over there that you're not seeing today. It gives you an idea of what was there earlier, and the fact that people valued the craft so much more that they have bought all of this, they have preserved it so well. I can't
yeah,
say the same for today's generation. I don't think we have enough people patronizing the handicraft space. So it is a dwindling patronage that we have. So I think it becomes very important for people like me at least, to start documenting these things. So hopefully at some point someone will sit up and say, okay, can we replicate this design? That would be great.
so I've been the beneficiary for this.
I think,
Why don't
like
you
you
why
said,
don't you
it's
stand up? Why don't you stand up and show the sari that you're wearing?
oh, this
You
sari
have to.
is something that is been created by Joy with his silk dhotis. It has gorgeous katha embroidery done on it, exquisite. I will be posting this on my FB timeline and Instagram and tagging. But yes, this is an absolutely precious, precious piece for more reasons than one. The entire silk is backed by a very soft muslin from his mother's sari, which has Jamdani on it, self in self. But the embroidery has to be seen to be believed. It's absolutely exquisite. Joy, I think this is a sari that's not going to anyone, much as I want people to let go. this is a sari that my sister has promised that will not go to
You
anyone
better
else
not give
except
it
her.
away. I
No, it
gifted it
won't.
to you. You're
She's
not to
very
give it
clear. She
away
said,
to
when you
anybody. It's
die,
for
this
you.
sari is coming to me. So this sari is already spoken for, you know.
That's a bit like my sister's saris. They keep saying, when you go, you're going to leave me this sari. So those
Yeah,
saris have actually gone to
right.
people.
This is among those few
Created.
saris that I'm neither lending nor giving to anyone else. But Joy, there was another question actually that I've been dying to ask. You know, saris have always, unfortunately or fortunately, come with a caste connotation. You know, the drapes have a caste connotation. The kind of saris we go have a caste connotation. How do you see this as a challenge when you're recreating saris or upcycling them? How do you overcome these, or do you think it plays no role in your kind of work?
The fact that they're old, I get.
Yeah, the fact that sometimes caste plays its part in textiles. Have you found that to sort of put a block to your work? Have you found that happening anywhere?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
It's never bothered me. I'm happy with you.
Do
You
you
want
see?
to?
Yeah. Do you see this as
No,
having
no.
appeal to the younger generation, the newer lot of people, because they don't want the traditional.
Younger generation?
Yeah.
Younger generation?
Yes.
I would be very, very happy if, even one young person bought a sari. It's like, then I would feel that I've done my bit towards heritage, towards textiles, and I'm passing it on to another generation. But I feel that, that value has to be also taught at home. It doesn't happen by itself. If your parents inculcate the fact that, we have such a rich tradition of textiles, unfortunately, Indian women, by and large in cities have stopped wearing saris. And why do I say even in villages, people used to wear saris, now wear salwar kurtas. Because it's cumbersome, as you say, sari. There are working women, for example, for them to carry a sari around. But, for example, my sister never wore anything but a sari. And she managed. She traveled. She did everything possible. She worked. She used to, be a costume designer in films and TV. And she stood all day, I know, doing whatever. It didn't bother her one bit. She'd always be dressed immaculately with her bindi and her hair, and it was fantastic. Everybody admired her for that. And my sister, who's moved in from Hyderabad, if there's any special occasion or generally even going out somewhere, she would wear a sari, but she does wear salwar kurtas for convenience. But ultimately, it's the sari for, that's it. It's like
we have a question,
Joy.
We have a question. Yeah. Radhi was asking, is there a barrier to wearing second-hand saris? Do you, typically we have a lot of superstition around wearing hand-me-downs that come from outside of the family. I'd wear my sisters, I'd wear my mothers or my cousins, but from outside the family, there is still a barrier. Do you see that as an impediment to your work?
Yes, certainly. In the sense, I won't say it's an impediment in the mindset of people. That's why I said people who are more liberal, who have a more better understanding of life in general and the continuity of life and the life cycle, then they can see how these fit into the fabric of their lives, literally fabric. So it is niche. It's niche because people don't wear saris. It's niche because it's old. But that very fact that it's old should actually work in its way. But the biggest thing that should work is in terms of charity. Because, ultimately, you have to see the end result of these saris. They're benefiting people afflicted with cancer at the last stages of their life. So this is a medium by which they can, donate. But in donating, there is pleasure because the saris are going to give somebody pleasure. Yes. It could be themselves, and they want it, or somebody else. And therefore, it's just the spreading of, happiness all around, which is what I feel. I don't know whether people are going to be happy buying the saris and wearing them, but I do hope so. You know? I do hope
Tejaswini
so.
had a question. She said, how difficult or how challenging is it to work with two very diverse materials on a single sari?
Two very diverse pieces.
Two very diverse fabrics. How difficult is it to work?
It's not difficult. It's not difficult because, as I said, I believe in harmony. And it sometimes means combining. But you see, the advantage, or rather, is I deal only with handlooms and natural fabrics. So there is a certain parity, you know, in terms of silk. I would, yes, match the textures in a way, but it's not necessary that I've used raw silk on, you know, on Chandel. So it's combining, but it's the same genre. I mean, how do I put it? They're all hand woven. So ultimately, they kind of blend. And I see to it that they blend. It's not difficult.
Okay.
As I said, it's a challenge.
There's
but
another
it's fun.
question. How to store your upcycled saris to make sure they last longer? Would you want me to take that?
I'm very careful. I'm very careful about what I use. If it's really in bad shape, then I wouldn't upcycle it because the basis for it must be strong. Okay. Sometimes the borders are delicate, but I back them, you know, and make sure that they're strong. And the body particularly has to be strong. So whenever I find the body giving way, I always replace the body.
Okay.
So yes, it's my responsibility. If I'm selling something, it can't be tearing, it can't be fraying. So yeah, that's definitely.
And I think I just add to that. I think the best way to store saris, and a lot of them are silk, is to keep airing the saris every few months and changing the fold, so that, you know, they don't get creased and they don't tear over there. And yes, when you wear them, I think you need to be a little more careful, you know, especially the silks, taking care not to damage the sari when you're wearing it, you know. So you don't use too many pins, you don't try, you know, experiment too much with your drapes unless you're absolutely confident you can take care of it. So, you know, I think basically keeping the draping style simple and not having too much of frenetic activity wearing those old saris would help a lot when you're wearing them, you know. You don't climb mountains wearing these saris. These are slightly more delicate and need to be taken care of slightly more carefully, I feel. Sure. Yeah.
There's also a way that people roll saris.
Yes.
So that there are no folds.
Right.
For the, you know, for example, my mother bought two fabulous temple saris for my sisters in Bangalore in like 1958 or 59. And they're still there, but they were never folded. Yeah. They've always been kept in a roll and put in muslin.
Yes.
So that's the trick to keep
also,
zari. Zari is what gets cut more than anything else. You'll find, and that's why sometimes when people send me kanjivarams, I find that the pallos particularly have frayed. So that, you know, the sari itself necessitates, I have to replace the pallu. And when I replace the pallu, I'm not trying to mimic what there was. I do something completely different. I put badla on kanjivaram, which is probably going to scare people. I mean, the time they think people who are traditional will think I'm mad. But, you know, it adds, because they're completely plain and you have heavy gold, you need some balance. As I said, it's harmony. You have to balance the whole thing.
There's a very interesting question there. It just has the concept of circular economy taken root in India. This is a prime example of that, and the younger generation in the West is investing heavily in circular economy. What do you think, Joy? I mean, from your perspective, has that taken root in India, the concept of circular economy? Or do we have a long way to go before we say it's...
No, I really couldn't say anything about it. It's the first time I'm hearing about it. So in the West, certainly.
Do you see Touch of Joy growing to be much bigger, spreading to other cities?
Well, I think since it's gone online, hopefully people from other cities will also get interested. I don't see myself traveling and selling the sarees and having exhibitions because it's, you know, at any given point in time, I don't have a lot of sarees, right? Because each one is being built up, you know. But right now I have 54 saris in Artisan School. It's actually, I didn't realize that, there are so many of them. I can be very fast in terms of when I get something, I'm so excited that I need to finish it, So the start to finish process of getting the sari and having a finished product is actually quite short, because every day I would go out, buy stuff, I would go to the tailor. So it's like a recurring thing. I know how people go to offices. Instead, I go to these are my offices. Saroj Fabrics, Abbas, Thakur Cut Piece, Pradhan, the Borders. So this is my office, a traveling office. I can go to, and that's how I collect, and that's how I put together.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
For those who are interested in looking at the collection, you could look up Artisans on the website. You could also go to Artisans once things settle down and look at them. You could reach out to Artisans. I think, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. We do hope all of you all will take it to donate a few saris, to buy saris, and to understand that this is just beyond just making saris and selling. There are lives that will benefit from this. So we do hope you will consider this when you are picking up a next sari. Thank you so much, Joy, for this, and being so patient with the technical learning that's happened over the past few days. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Radhi.
Thank you, Savita. Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you, Radhi. The whole team. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.